Hi, my name is Patience Murray, and I'm a Pulse survivor to champion. On the night of June 12, 2016, I experienced a level of horror that no one should ever experience, especially not on a family vacation. I was 20 years old, and I was shot twice in both of my legs, and the bullet that entered my right leg shattered my femur. And to this day, I still have a metal rod and screws at my hip and above my knee. Even when I dance, even when I walk, even when I run, I have pain. There's never a day when I don't have pain. And when I think about that night, the innocence, the fun, the joy of being together as a girl group from Philadelphia, it was my first time getting on a plane to go anywhere when we went to Orlando. And it was my first time ever being on a friend's family vacation. And it was my first time ever really celebrating anything super positive in my life or the life of anyone else. And we were celebrating the graduation of Akira Murray, who was the youngest victim killed at 18 years old in the Pulse nightclub shooting. We were celebrating her full scholarship, full basketball scholarship to Mercyhurst University. And the energy of that night up until the shooting showed that there was so much life and so many beautiful things in store for her future and all of us. We literally had the best night ever. Imagine yourself being out with a group of friends, just randomly deciding to pick a club. And for us, we just didn't want to be in the house. We didn't want to be in the house, and we decided to Google 18 and up clubs in Orlando. Pulse was one of the options that came up, but we chose it because of the exciting pictures, the colorfulness, the brightness of it, and being an ally of the LGBTQ plus community. It was a no-brainer for us, and it was only $10 when we called, and it just made sense. And I think a lot of us have those moments where we just want to have fun and things just make sense, and we don't expect the absolute worst. But that's what happened to us that night. And it was around 1:58 a.m. after having the best night ever. I mean, dancing, having a great time, seeing the performers. There was even a Beyonce, a J-Lo. It was so exciting. And everybody in the club was engaging with each other. It was the most amazing time. Up until my friend Tiara at the time was swiping on her phone to order our Uber because we were getting ready to go home. It was the very end of the night. It was time to go. We sweated. We didn't away. Out of nowhere, gunshots started firing off over the music. And that Ultimate Girls Night had a screaming halt. Instead, people were screaming. And it was complete chaos. I remember being in Philadelphia, never feeling so scared. And it was so ironic to me is that I never heard any sound like that before. It was so vicious. It was so ferocious. The sound, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to do. I just dropped to the floor and I started scooting backwards. And all I remember seeing is people in complete chaos in front of me. Akira, she was right in between Tiara and I. And Tiara, she ran towards the bar and she was completely stunned. She was stuck in shock. And Akira saw me backing up, scooting towards an exit that I didn't even know was there, but the door happened to be open. And when I remember feeling my hand on the ground, all I could see is Akira running over to me. And I looked up and I could see her curly hair, but the indigo sky behind her. And the only thing I could think of is, where's Tiara? At that point, she let me know that Tiara was still inside. And I said, we have to go get her. At that point, Akira darted back inside with no hesitation. I picked myself up off the ground and I ran back in. And we saw her there, squatting by the bar, completely paralyzed. What we all thought was supposed to be this fun-loving night turned into a complete nightmare. And that's what it was. We didn't know what to do. We were completely shocked and stunned at the sounds and the gunshots still going off and people screaming and people running, that we saw so many people running towards, and hers is running towards the bathroom. So we decided to follow them. And that's what we did. And we were the last few to make it into our bathroom stall. We decided to run into the handicapped bathroom stall because it was bigger. But when we opened the door, there was nearly 20 people already in there, huddled up on the floor. And there was this one woman holding her arm, bleeding. And we asked her, "What happened to you? What happened to you?" And she said, "I've been shot." At that point, nothing could register because we were literally just having the best night of our life. To a woman holding her arm bleeding saying, "I've been shot." It didn't seem real. It didn't seem real at all. And it caused a certain denial until we heard the footsteps of the gunman walk into the bathroom. And then after that, we heard the gunfire. And bullets hitting the walls. There was wall fragments flying everywhere. It was complete chaos. And the only reason why he stopped is because his gun jammed. I remember looking down at my legs after he first fired, said his gun jammed, and he put his gun down on the floor. I looked down, and I remember seeing blood pouring from my right leg. And I didn't even know that I got shot in my left leg until I got into the ambulance and my clothes were cut. The pain from being shot by an automatic rifle at that time felt like my leg was literally ripping away from my body each time I tried to move. I don't wish that pain on anyone else. And then seeing Akira laid across Tiara's lap, looking lifeless. That's a sight that I don't wish for anybody. I was so afraid that during those 3 hours being held hostage with the gunman at Pulse, that he would open the stall door and shoot me in the face. I decided to put my face into the next stall, right next to it. And I remember seeing bodies laid over the toilet, lifeless, bleeding. It's a sight that you can't ever unsee. It took 3 hours of each second passing feeling like I never knew if I was going to make it out of there. After hearing the gunman say he had bombs in his car, after hearing the gunman say, "I have snipers outside," after hearing the gunman say, things that would terrify us for the rest of our lives. I never thought that I would make it out of there. And then when we heard the police finally breaking through the walls in other sections of the club, he came into our stall. The worst had happened. I remember hearing him say, "Hey, you." Then he shot someone. Then he shot another person. And then I remember feeling his presence hovered over where I was. And I remember feeling someone next to me move closer to me. And I remember feeling their breath in my... And then the gunman shot again. And the person laying next to me screamed. And that's when the police came crashing through the wall. And they exchanged in gunfire with the gunman and killed him. There is no amount of thoughts and prayers that can undo what was seen, experienced, and felt that night. But each time I see the news, each time I see kids having to endure that same level of terror and tragedy, and families experiencing the same tragedy, I can't understand. I just can't understand why we haven't come to any conclusion yet with any goal that we have in life, whether it's trying to lose weight, trying to gain weight. There are steps in place that we have to take in order to see that goal achieved. I would think after tragedy, after tragedy, after tragedy, after tragedy, after conversation, after debate, after debate, after debate, that we would have a solution. And it doesn't have to be a one size fits all, but at least one solution that we could start with to start seeing some progress towards the goal of ending gun violence, improving gun safety, and making sure that kids don't ever, anyone has to ever experience the horrible tragedies that collectively that we've all been experiencing as a nation for the last decade. All I ask for Congress, all I ask for anyone who has any real decision-making power, be the champion that you were put in place to be. You were put in place with leadership, with these powerful decision-making moments like this to make a difference. So do it. We've talked about it already. We know what solutions can work. And it may not work for every situation, but that's okay. That's how we learn. All I ask is for you to make some sort of action step. That's all. If anything from this entire filibuster, for anything, just make one action step. It may not be the cure to end all gun violence, but it may be a start. And I think, speaking for other survivors, speaking for families who have experienced loss and tragedy due to gun violence, whether it's mass shootings, everyday gun violence, or even gun deaths by suicide, can we put some provisions in place to make sure, whether it be with universal background checks and adding a mental health review, just to make sure that we can trust emotionally and mentally that people are getting guns and can be responsible with them. We're not trying to take people's rights away. We just want to make sure that we limit these instances that happen again and again and again. That's all. That's all we need. We can't trust that everybody's going to do the right thing with a gun, but what we can do, what we can make sure, is that we put provisions in place that make sure that no one does. All I ask right now, if anybody's listening, add the universal background checks with a mental health review. And weapons of war. We've seen it time and time again. 3 hours it took. It took for police to come in and intervene in behalf of what was happening in Pulse. Maybe a part of the reason was the weapon style that he was using was too powerful for the security or anybody to intervene sooner. Maybe weapons like that shouldn't be freely accessible to people that we can't trust are going to be responsible while using them. And at this state, the emotional instability, at the state of a collective trauma that we've experienced as a nation, I don't think at this point, maybe one day that'll change. I just don't think at this point that we could trust having these military style weapons easily accessible. There's too many things going on. There's too many emotions are too high. There's too much pain in our nation. These are the moments when our champions and leadership have to rise and make the decisions that are going to be the best on behalf of the people. This is your moment. We're all here having a conversation, talking about our stories, talking about our experiences with gun violence, talking about the work that we do in the community, talking about all the things that gun violence survivors experience and families who've experienced trauma experience due to gun violence. But none of this matters. None of it's going to matter if you don't use your power and make a choice towards the goal that we all know and agree on. Thank you.